Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amarjot Sandhu, and I'm proud to be here representing the people of Brampton West. I would like to welcome Premier Ford and Minister Lecce to Brampton and thank Mayor Patrick Brown for attending today. Over the past few months, I've seen our community set up in so many ways to help one another through these unprecedented times. During the pandemic, it was wonderful to see how teachers in Brampton West and across the city shifted quickly to connect with students and supported students through distance learning. This helped students stay active, focused, motivated, engaged, and connected. Such connection offered students a social network along with the sense of continuity, purpose, growth, and of belonging to a larger community. This is the Ontario spirit. We also saw young students championing the idea of Ontario spirit by expressing gratitude to coronavirus pandemic heroes by putting very creative and beautiful messages in front of their house in my riding and across Brampton. And these are just one of many, many examples of this community came forward to support, especially those who were vulnerable and vote to defeat the pandemic and its devastating impact over the ever-amazing Brampton community. Now, as we reopen more of the province and more people and businesses get back on their feet, we have an opportunity to not only rebuild everything we have lost through this pandemic, but to build for the future. We have to start laying the foundations now for our long-term prosperity. It starts with our young people. This year, we're getting shovels in the ground on 3 new school projects here in Brampton, schools that will meet the need of our growing community and ensure students and teachers have access to modern classrooms. These critical investments are not only being made here in Brampton, but all across the province this year. To share more details about our government's plan to invest in our schools and students, it's my honor to invite to the podium the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amarjot. Well, thank you so much, Amarjot. And well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with Minister Lecce, our all-star education minister, along with the Peel District School Board. And by the way, the Peel District School Board, you guys are doing a great job, and thank you for everything you're doing. I want to recognize our local champions, Minister Sakaria and Amarjot Sandhu, the MPP for Brampton West, who are working hard around the clock for the people of Brampton. And today's announcement is proof that Prab and Amarjot are getting results. It's also great to be here with Mayor Patrick Brown. Great to see you again, Patrick. You're doing an incredible job here in Brampton getting through this pandemic. My friends, I just love the people of Brampton. I'll tell you a little story. At the start, when Carla and I got married 32 years ago, my wife and I, we looked around and we looked at this great community, and we moved. I remember the address. It was 8 Lisa Street, apartment 2802. What a great area. And it's kind of like a second home there. So we lived here for 5 years, and this is a beautiful city with some of the best people in Ontario. They're absolute champions here in Brampton. This city is growing, and it's growing fast. And going back to when I moved here, I remember the 410 didn't even exist. It was 2 little lanes. Now look at it. It's like a metropolis. It's growing like wildfire there. And we finally have a government that will make the investments needed to keep up with this growth. My friends, we're making a record historic investments. We're investing in healthcare, transit, and transportation, long-term care and education right here in Brampton, in Peel Region, and across Ontario. At the Brampton Civic Hospital, William Osler Health Systems, our government is investing over $46 million on a new facility that will create 608 new beds. We're investing $160 million in new public transit for Brampton, including new buses and transit hub for Brampton Transit and Go Transit. We're moving forward with the Hurontario LRT, a $4.6 billion investment that will bring incredible new transit options to Brampton and Mississauga. We've invested over $20 million to keep Peel Region safe and help fight against guns and gangs. My friends, we want to make sure these investments now, so growing communities like this one are ready for the future. In one area that we must always invest in is our youth. And in growing communities like Brampton, we need shovels in the ground now to build a strong foundation for our children's future. The investments we make today will set our students down the path for lifelong success. That's why I'm here today to announce our government is investing $12 billion over the next decade to build new schools and refurbish and expand existing ones. That's $12 billion, the largest capital investment in our school system in a generation. This year alone, we're investing $500 million to build 30 brand new schools and expand 15 existing schools, creating 25,000 more student spaces by 2023. And that means 2 brand new schools right here in Brampton. We're going to build modern classrooms with access to high-speed internet, air conditioning, and accessibility features like ramps and elevators. We're creating the best possible environment for our students as they prepare to compete in the highly competitive global economy. This is about unleashing the incredible potential of our bright young students now and for generations to come. Through all of these projects, we're creating 900 new and affordable licensed childcare spaces in these schools. This is part of our plan to add 30,000 childcare spaces, including 10,000 spaces in new schools over 5 years. And we hope these schools will provide role models that will inspire our kids to reach their full potential. Role models like Private Buckham Singh, one of the first Canadian Sikhs to fight in the First World War, and whose name is now on the doors of a brand new school right here in Brampton. Role models like Malala Yousafzai, I apologize for that pronunciation, folks, a brave activist for girls' education in Pakistan and an honorary Canadian. Her name will also soon be in the front of a brand new school right here near Queen Mary Drive and Remembrance Road. Both Private Singh and Malala are shining examples for young people. Courage, perseverance, and service to others. These are ideals we want to pass on to the next generation of Ontarians, and I hope when students walk through the doors of these brand new schools, they can dream as big as Malala and Private Singh and see themselves and their communities reflected in the heroes we honor. Because the best investment you can make is in the child's future. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Lecce.
Well, good afternoon. I want to thank the Peel District School Board community, the Interim Director, Jasper Gill, Superintendent Patrika Dawes, Principals Sylvia Zanella and Mary Casiato, and of course, Trustee Sohi. I also want to thank the Mayor Brown for welcoming us here to the beautiful city of Brampton. And I especially want to thank and give a shout out to my friend MPP Amarjot Sandhu and Minister Sakaria for inviting the Premier and I here to Brampton, really incredibly strong leaders and friends who are making a real difference for the people of Peel Region. I know just how much schools mean to communities like we have here in Peel, and to students and to families, teachers and to staff. Schools are the heart of our communities. They are the centers of discovery, of learning and the development of character. As we recover from COVID-19, it is vital that we lay the foundation for a province where everyone can succeed with our next generation, the next generation at the center of that mission. And many communities, they need better schools, state-of-the-art learning facilities, and I believe our students deserve no less. In that spirit, today our government is investing in the future of young people with a school infrastructure investment of over $500 million to build new schools, to renovate existing schools, and expand childcare spaces for working moms and dads across our province. This money will be used to build new schools and to fund major additions, and as the Premier noted, create nearly 900 new licensed childcare spaces as part of the newly funded capital priorities projects. I want to be clear that that money we're talking about, over $500 million, is invested this year alone. It's part of a much larger investment of over $12 billion in capital grants over the next decade. Now that's supported by over $1.3 billion in maintenance funding to ensure that our schools are up to date and safe. There are over 330 schools and childcare projects either in the planning stages or already have shovels in the ground as we speak, and roughly 90 are tracking to open this September. Now, our government has approved 45 new projects, including 30 brand new schools, 15 permanent significant additions to existing schools. new schools, major school additions, nearly 900 childcare spots supporting the next generation. Laying the foundation for their success starts with a modern and safe learning environment. It's why we're also investing to ensure internet is connected to every high school in Ontario this September. It's also bolstered by a modernized curricula, strong efforts to counter racism, and ensuring our system rewards hard work and restores the principle of a meritocracy. And by laying that groundwork for student success, we ensure that they get the most out of their educational experience, enabling them to get to college, university, and the skilled trades. But it all starts in our schools. We also know the parents and students are looking for clarity about what school will look like in September. Now, we intend to announce the plan for the safe resumption to class that will be equipped with strong health and safety measures in short order. We're finalizing those plans with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and we'll share more details about that plan, that protocol, and those investments next week. Today's announcement is really about giving our students and all families really the best head start, ensuring that schools remain the cornerstone of thriving communities across our great province. Now, I'm proud to be here today in Brampton, celebrating this landmark investment in our students. I know many students and many families will benefit from these investments for generations to come. Thank you, and merci. I'll turn it over to Mayor Brown.
Well, I'd like to thank Premier Ford and Minister Lecce for visiting Brampton today. I have really appreciated the leadership of Premier Ford during the COVID pandemic. He's been staying in close touch with mayors across the province. I think I've been on the phone with him a few times every week as issues have come up, and I appreciate that accessibility. The cautious approach, listening to the public health professionals, has been a prudent decision. I also want to thank the Premier for his efforts to negotiate a particularly good deal with the federal government. I look forward to receiving more details on the Safe Restart Agreement. Municipalities across the GTHA are on the front lines at responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, and these essential workers in municipalities, transit operators, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, they needed this help, and it's going to make a big difference. As our country continues its recovery efforts, now more than ever, it's great to see all levels of government working together. We can't have any other approach during a pandemic. It has to be collaborative, and we have that right now. So I'm honored to be here today at Fairlawn Public School. I want to thank Minister Sarkaria and Amarjot Sandhu, who are hardworking local representatives doing their best to serve Brampton and the growing needs that our city has. Today's announcement is great news for students. Brampton is the fastest growing large city in Canada. Today's announcement highlights the record investments in capital funding. The government is committing $12 billion in capital grants over 10 years, including over $500 million in this school year alone to support large-scale school-based capital projects, including new childcare spaces. Investments will fund new schools and additions to address accommodation pressures, support school consolidations, replace schools in poor condition, provide accommodation to French language students, and expand licensed childcare availability in schools. As well as investing in new schools is a great way to stimulate the economy. These are infrastructure projects. And I can tell you these two new schools in Brampton are going to be very well received. Today's announcement was originally scheduled at private Buckham Sings Public School. I guess we're here today to have the air conditioning. And I want to congratulate the trustees for approving the naming of this new school, in particular, Trustee Belbir Sohi, who had this wonderful idea, and talk about a role model to celebrate. Private Buckham Singh was one of the first Sikh Canadians to enlist with the Canadian Army during the First World War. The fact that we get to remember this hero, this individual of courage, I just think is wonderful and very special for our community. With the recent discovery of his Victory Medal and his gravesite in Kitchener's Mount Hope Cemetery, we learned about the contributions of a Canadian hero. And it's a privilege to have a new school named after an individual who is a representative of many families in our community. And we can honor the sacrifices of an important Canadian immigrant. So once again, thank you to the Government of Ontario for investing in Brampton. I look forward to the Premier visiting our city again. I have to say, I love it when he comes with a funding announcement. So anytime you want to come with a funding announcement, Premier Ford, you're always welcome in Brampton. And so thank you for the investments that you're making in healthcare, post-secondary education, and transit infrastructure. Here in Brampton, we are eager to develop talent, create jobs, and build a community that is connected, sustainable, and innovative. And I also want to thank Minister Lecce. Systemic racism was a big concern within Peel schools, and the fact that we had a minister with the courage and the principle to intervene and to confront it head on is something that we're very grateful for. I know Trustee Kathy McDonald is not here today, but if she was, she'd probably want to give Minister Lecce a hug. So thank you, and it's great to see this announcement today.
We're going to go to the phone line for questions. Just a reminder that it's one question and one follow-up.
Your first question comes from Chris Rushawi with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Chris.
Hi there. My question is for Minister Lecce.
Yep.
Today's education funding announcement is for new schools and renovations. It's more over the long term, and I'm just wondering, with school just over a month away, when are we going to hear about things like funding for additional teachers, COVID-related renovations to schools, like things that actually work so kids can wash their hands,
Right.
improve ventilation and things like that? These are things that boards have to do regardless if schools open up full-time or part-time. So I'm just wondering, will there be new funding for these kinds of things, and when will boards find out about it?
Yeah, thank you. Today's investment of the $500 million set aside is a significant investment because, to be fair, many of our schools in many communities, suburban, urban, and rural, require modernization. No, kids in our province, in this wealthy democracy, they shouldn't be in a school that, has significant repair backlog. So the Premier has made a decision to put the investments in place, yes, for long-term redevelopment of schools, but to be fair, there's almost 90 new schools that are going to open, or renovation projects that are completed that will open this September. So that's going to be a benefit we're going to feel today in the immediate coming days. We're also ensuring $1.4 billion in the renewal funding to do what you say in the context of improving ventilation or HVAC capacity or hand sanitation centers or even working water fountains. That type of investment, 2.5%, as the Auditor General has encouraged government to meet, we are doing so. To your point about the next steps for September, the Premier and the government continues to be focused on a safe, conventional, day-to-day return to school, maybe a new conventional, where kids can go to school 5 days a week. We're finalizing the health protocols, working very closely with the Chief Medical Officer, some of the best pediatric minds in the nation that are informing the plan. We believe we'll be able to unveil it next week. That will include additional supports and resources to enable our boards to succeed. But for context, so far, in the Peel District School Board, for example, has a net investment, $45 million more this September to enable them to succeed. In the Catholic Board, it's an $11.5 million net investment in Peel. But I appreciate that there's more we can do, and the Premier has been clear we'll do whatever it takes to keep our staff and our kids safe in on September.
Follow-up.
Okay, thank you. And on another education issue, there's been a bit of criticism about your decision to change the qualifications for directors of education so that they don't have to have classroom teaching experience. But I was just wondering if you're going to be amending any regulations to state what kind of experience they need to have. Could school boards hire a university dean or someone with some kind of education experience but not necessarily classroom experience? For example, the current director in Toronto who has a large financial background but is not a teacher.
Yeah, look, we believe that when it comes to ensuring that the best leader is in front of your child's class, or likewise running a very complex multi-billion-dollar organization in our school boards, we want the right person, the best person to guide that hiring. And right now, what we have seen is that the regulation is rather prescriptive. And we're in hospitals, for example, we've moved away from doctors running hospitals. We've allowed for a greater latitude of competence. There are 20 directors of education that will retire very shortly. They've indicated publicly or privately to the ministry that they're going to be exiting the workforce, and we're grateful for their contribution. But we have an opportunity, a generational opportunity, as Mayor Brown said, in the context of equity, to make sure that we better reflect the communities we serve. And when 4% of Ontario directors are visible minorities, I would submit respectfully, we have some work to do. And I think that means we need to do a better job of expanding the eligibility. In Toronto, as you noted, we are very proud that the first Black female director of education in our province's history was just appointed. And in that appointment, that individual is, as noted, is not a Ontario certified teacher, happens to be a 20-year veteran in the public service, happens to be a CPA, happens to have financial acumen, but also happens to be a passionate defender of public education, having worked in school boards for many years. That individual is clearly the preference of that board. The board in Toronto unanimously asked me, they petitioned me many weeks ago to permit an exception to the regulation. This happens quite often, every few years. So what we want to make sure is the right person emerges with the right skill sets to run these organizations, to lead them forward. And I think what we're going to be trying to achieve is that diversity of experience, and more so the triumph of experience when it comes to hiring and promotions in Ontario. It also speaks to our preference to ensure that that principle applies within our classroom to make sure we have a more reflective educator working within schools like here in Brampton that have very proudly have a very large racialized community. And it's not right, I would argue, that principals today are not permitted to choose an educator who, yes, is of course qualified, highly merited, but happens to reflect the community and the classroom that they serve in. So we can do better in this respect, which is the basis of that change. And I think that this change will help to improve our school board management and really allow our students to have a better educational experience.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Ashley Newport with insaga.com. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Earlier this week, you visited Mississauga and you announced that a new accelerated build pilot program is going to be used to build 2 new long-term care facilities in the city.
Yes.
I know that long-term care might be a bit different from traditional hospital, but since Brampton is such a large city and only has 1 full-service hospital, I'm wondering if there's been any talk about potentially using this program to create a new full-service hospital in Brampton in the coming months or years.
Well, that's a great question. Going back to what I was saying in my speech there, we're investing $46 million in William Osler, and there's always an opportunity in growing communities like Brampton to look at an option of putting in another hospital with consultation with the mayor and consultation with the Ministry of Health. Never take that off the table, because as the mayor mentioned, it's the second or one of the first largest municipalities growing faster than any other region in the community. But going back to the quick build, as we call it, everyone's pitching in, from the municipality to labor leaders and the governments. Everyone's working together, and we're going to see if we can get this done. It's going to be a challenge for all of us, and I'd love the media to kind of take step by step and watch us go. We're going to be working around the clock, 24/7. And we're going to build 2 6-story buildings with 320 units in each. And it's unheard of in North America. From the time you put the shovels in 7 months, we're going to have 3 state-of-the-art long-term care facilities. And after we sit back and we evaluate it, my question is, so we're doing it with these because everyone's cooperating. Why can't we do it with new hospitals, new schools, new private sector buildings? Because that's what drives the economy. As I mentioned, it was about a month ago, we lost $500 million worth of development and jobs right here in Ontario. And when I talked to the folks, they said, it would take me 6 years to get an EA. He says, it's absolutely ridiculous. How can I invest that much money and watch it sit there for 6 years while a bunch of bureaucracy and red tape ties up all my money? And I couldn't even argue with them. So we have to move that forward. And really, really quick. When someone puts an application in, we need to get the permits out at all 3 levels, no matter if it's the municipalities or the province or the feds. But I'll tell you one thing, Mayor moves. Mayor Brown, when he hears an opportunity, man, he moves on it. He's quick. If someone comes to Mayor Brown and says, I have $500 million investment, I got to build that building, I know Patrick, he'd sit there just like myself. We'd be getting the shovel out and start shoveling away. But I'm gonna pass this over to Mayor Brown here. Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo the Premier's comments that when everyone's working together, there's no reason that you can't have things happen a lot faster. We have to get rid of that red tape, and certainly in Brampton, I can tell you any opportunities to invest in infrastructure, to welcome new business, there is the ability to do so. And when I hear about projects that take 6 or 7 years, it makes you want to pull your hair out, because we need those jobs and those opportunities now, and we'll use whatever tools we have municipally to make sure we can expedite those opportunities.
Follow up.
Thank you. So on another topic, recently a number of GTHA mayors penned a letter calling on the province to implement additional safety measures around the reopening of bars and restaurants with indoor dining and fitness facilities. I think some of the things they're calling for are, stricter capacity limits and, insurances that at bars people stay in their seats. I'm just wondering if the province does actually plan to implement new rules or policies around these facilities as they reopen, as more cities and regions go into stage 3.
Well, I fully agree with the guidelines, especially in big urban areas like Toronto and the GTA, be it Peel or York or any of the large areas. And under Section 22 of the Health Act, each regional chief medical officer has that authority to put those guidelines in, and I encourage them to do it if they feel comfortable in doing it. But what works, I've always said this, what works for Toronto and the GTA doesn't necessarily work for our friends up in Kenora or way up north in these rural areas that haven't seen any cases at all and might have a small restaurant / little bar. But my advice all the time, be vigilant, practice social distancing, always wear a mask no matter where you are, especially when you're in large groups. And just follow the guidelines. Everyone's been doing great. I got to thank the people of Ontario again. I looked at the numbers this morning, 103. Man, I just can't wait to break that 100 barrier. And then we keep going down. And I know Mayor Brown's been working very hard day in and day out on making sure he keeps the numbers down in Brampton and Peel region. And I just want to thank everyone. Everyone's pitching in, doing an incredible job. And all you have to do is turn on the news. You watch CNN, Fox, whoever you're watching, and see the disaster that's happening south of the border. You're seeing 11, 15,000 cases a day. And we're equipped. We're ready, more than we've ever been ready for a second wave, flu season. We put $935 million into the health system, making sure we have enough acute care beds, and making sure that our testing program is working like a well-oiled machine. We're up over 20,000 every single day. So we're much better equipped. We have PPE. We have PPE suppliers all over the province now. We have more mask manufacturers than ever before. I think 35 was the last count. Face shields, we have probably close to 50 or 60 of them. So we're really equipped, but never take our eye off the ball, never let our guard down, ever, because this can come back and bite us in the backside as quickly as anything.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Lucas Meyer with News Talk 1010. Please go ahead.
How you doing, Lucas?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I do have an education question, but actually, Premier, if I can start on another subject. As you may have seen, York Regional Police have charged a former employee of the 407 ETR in the data breach that came to light in the last provincial election. Given the allegations at the time of the alleged links to the PC government, are you reopening an internal investigation?
Well, that was, I think, during the nomination or something. I can't, to be frank, I remember that happening. I think it was during the nomination. Anyways, we got rid of the person that didn't run for us, and I didn't have anything to do with that. So I'm glad he was charged, and it just sends a message to people: don't take data that doesn't belong to you and use it for the wrong things. So I'm glad he was charged, whoever it is. I can't even remember the guy's name, to be frank with you.
Follow up.
Thank you. And Premier, if you could clarify, though, if that means a no on an internal investigation. And for the Minister, after that, Minister, in terms of daycare, we learned just recently that only 40% of all daycares in Ontario are open. So obviously far from the goal of 91% capacity. So my question is, with the cohorts increasing on Monday, how confident are you that the remaining, 3,000 plus daycares will be open by September when school starts?
So before I pass it over to the Minister, the answer is no. There's no reason to. The York region looked into it, charged a person. The right thing happened. And I'll pass it over to the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Well, today, just for context of why we're here in Brampton with my colleagues Amarjot and Prab, is because we're announcing part of our investment, $500 million in school renewals, also 900 net new childcare spaces that are being funded for accessible and affordable childcare for working parents of the province, and that starts today. That is a forward-looking investment. When it comes to getting parents, moms and dads back to work, obviously we have a commitment to do so. We want them to be able to do so with confidence, knowing that their children are safe. And so what we have announced is last week, just days ago, we announced that we're scaling up the cohort, essentially going from groupings of 10 to 15. That incremental increase from 10 to 15 represents a significant amount of pre-COVID capacity. So, so far under the groupings of 10, the first phase of that plan, we've realized roughly 40% have reopened. So we're well on track to getting that capacity online for working parents and doing so in a safe manner, because when it comes to our earliest learners, we're not going to compromise safety. We have very strict health and safety standards. We have funding in place for the operators to make sure that they're accessible and that they're viable, that they're going to be present and open for months and years ahead. But we've also taken consumer protection action for parents to say, look, you can't lose your spot and your fee can't be increased as a result of our government's action. So we are confident that we're going to get to where we need to be in the context of building up capacity, giving parents, giving moms and dads in Ontario that absolute confidence that they will have a space in their community to use for childcare. And keep in mind, operators will open when they are ready. We have not, we've been clear that operators will do so when they're ready to do so. We've given them health and safety protocols that we believe will help. And obviously, as we continue to flatten the curve in this province, we'll continue to scale up capacity. The Premier's been very clear when it comes to my mandate, which is to get to 100%. And we have a plan in place to do that, and we'll unveil that plan once public health data enables us to get to the next step.
Last question.
Your final question comes from Sean Jeffords with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Sean.
Good afternoon, Premier. I wanted to follow up on a question that Chris asked earlier regarding funding for schools related specifically to COVID-19 and reopening in September. I want to clarify, because I think I heard the minister suggest that there will be some news on this next week. And if that's the case, I mean, isn't this kind of coming too late? I mean, shouldn't this funding have been announced weeks ago?
Well, I don't think so. If you put it this way, Sean, if we go back about a month ago, 5 weeks ago, the province was hitting about 240 cases of COVID. Look where we are now. Today we're at 103. So this has been very fluid. It's been moving, and we have to adapt with the changes. When the minister first came out, and he'll continue along this line, that we have to be prepared if we ever get a second wave to have a plan. So we have a plan. We have 3 scenarios, a hybrid scenario and then the other 2. But really our goal and the minister's goal and everyone's goal in Ontario is to make sure we get the kids back in the classroom 5 days a week. It's the #1 priority. That's, I always say, I don't need pollsters. All I have to do is talk to the mums and dads out there. They want certainty. They want to be able to tell the place where they work that they are going to be coming in. They want to make sure their kids is in a safe environment. They want to make sure they have childcare after school or after school day care, and that's what we're going to do. That's our goal, and we're going to work closely with the teachers, the parents, school boards, and there's nothing we can't do when we all work together. That's what I've said from day one. I'll pass this over to the Minister Lecce. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, the commitment the government has made is that we are going to do whatever it takes to keep kids safe. And part of that is enhancing training and funding for the restart of school. Obviously, a month ago, we were in a different position, as the Premier noted. We have made as a province our collective hard work and unity to reduce the risk and flatten the curve is a reflection of our collective work. And as a consequence of that good work, we're able to really focus on that conventional 5-day-a-week experience for elementary and secondary students. That is important. And what we are doing is we're finalizing that plan to provide to boards, to provide to parents, and of course to educators and staff with how we're going to create a health protocol that's relevant for the data today. And obviously we've really ensured that our planning responds on a local basis to that risk, because it's moving day to day, week to week, and we've got to be ready. And the obligation we're, I think, underscoring today is we're going to be making short-term investments. We've already made some in the context of $10 million more in mental health to help these kids, because I know that they've had some, some real impacts on young learners. Being out of school for 6 months, that is, it's an impact that I think is real, and I know we all appreciate, to hire more psychologists and psychotherapists and social workers. We're also investing $15 million net new for technology, which could procure up to 37,000 computers and tablets. But I also recognize as we go from the adapted model that we spoke about a month ago based on data then to a conventional model that our school boards will continue to need more support, more training, and we're going to be there for them. And we're going to work together to get this right, because as we look globally, from Hong Kong to Germany, France, and a variety of jurisdictions that have reopened schools, we have seen some challenges with that process. So we're taking the time, working closely with the medical officer to finalize the plan, to look globally, to learn lessons so that we don't repeat them in this province, and we keep your child and all families safe in Ontario. Thank you.
Follow up.
Premier, I wanted to ask you a question on another subject, long-term care. So several unions this morning are calling for an end to the involvement of for-profit companies in long-term care. I'm wondering if you think that's feasible, given the heavy involvement of for-profit companies in the long-term care sector, and if you would support that call that they've made this morning.
Well, as I've said, we have our working group coming together. We'll be making an announcement by the end of this month. We announced that we're putting $1.75 billion into long-term care. There's never been funding like that ever in the history of this province. And as I say, I take full ownership of what's happening in long-term care. It's been a broken system all the way back to, as one person told me, Bill Davis's days. But we're going to fix the problem. We're going to make sure that we have air conditioning in long-term care. We're going to make sure that we put proper guidelines and procedures, and we have to make sure we have to support the frontline healthcare workers that put everything on the line. They put their long-term care patients ahead of themselves and ahead of their families. They're absolute heroes, and I appreciate what they're doing. But again, with long-term care, we've come a long way as a province, all of us collectively together, to try to fix this problem. But we're going to be all over it. And to answer your question, everything's on the table. I'll look at everything, but we're putting a tremendous amount of investment into long-term care right now. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll make sure that happens. Thank you so much.